Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural analyst, and today we're going to be looking at a gross violation of disrespect toward law enforcement, toward the governing authorities. And we have abundant teachings in the Christian faith. We have abundant teachings throughout the Bible that we are, as citizens of nations, as citizens of communities, we are supposed to respect the governing authorities. I'm talking specifically of Romans 13 in the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul is writing to Christians, and he's saying, everyone, verse 1, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities exist, have been established by God. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has established and instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. And it goes on. We'll talk more about that. But we have a clear-cut teaching in Christianity. This has been known for centuries, many centuries in the West, and has been known for ever since the establishment of our nation, that you have to respect the governing authorities. You have to listen to when a policeman comes up to you and stops you. You have to listen to them. You have to heed their warning. If they say you can't go there, you can't go there. If they tell you to stop your car, you have to turn your car off. If they tell you to roll down your window, you have to roll down your window. If they need your if they need your insurance and registration, you give them, and you say, yes, officer, or even yes, sir. And you answer their questions, and then you're on your way. You do not argue with them. You do not sit there and fight them or in any way get hostile with them. This is basic civility 101. And most parents used to teach this to their children, but today we are not teaching that to children. And so we have another demonstration of how lack of respect for authority is really multiplying in our time, where we see policemen in New York City trying to break up a snowball fight, and they are getting hit by snowball and ice, bricks of ice and all kinds of things. And these people in the park seem to think that they can be aggressive and be violent toward police officers, and it's no big deal. That is wrong. It is a big deal. And so I'm going to roll a clip here, and this is presented by Megan Kelly. Hopefully there's no dirty language. She has been getting lately a little bit salty in her language, and hopefully I've noticed this also among even so-called Christian podcasters. They have gotten a little bit spicy with their language, and I hope that this clip does not reflect that. But we're going to roll this clip, and she's going to summarize what took place in Central Park in New York City. So let me get her on the video here, and I'm going to make some commentary as she explains things. So let's roll the clip.
Because the NYPD came out to deal with, reportedly it was a massive snowball fight that was happening in one of the parks in New York. And, these things can get nasty, and they actually can get dangerous for passersby. There's no place in New York that's rural where no passerby would be endangered by hundreds of snowballs getting thrown around. So the NYPD goes to try to see if this is orderly, and it's not. And already the mob is forming. And then they start pelting the cops in the face. And I'm talking man, woman, black, white, Hispanic, you name it. All of these thugs pummeling them over and over in their heads, in their faces, down the back of their necks with massive snowballs and ice. Here's some film of it. Watch.
Okay, so she set it up. I don't think there's anything that she left out, essentially. So it's a snowball fight that breaks out in Central Park. They were getting rowdy. They were getting a little too violent. It was getting too big. And so the police are called in to deal with this problem. And so you have people walking in the park. You have people walking their dogs in the park. You have people running, jogging. It's a central hub of Manhattan. And people need to be able to go there and not be afraid that they're going to get hit in the skull with a piece of ice or hard snow or something. And so it was a safety concern, a legitimate police operation. The policeman wanted to go there and just tell these people, hey, you got to break this up. It's getting too big. It's getting out of hand. And so the police come in, and that's not where it ends. That's where it should have ended. Citizens in a decent civil society should realize that when the police come in and tell you to stop doing something or break up what you're doing because it's getting too big and out of hand, you need to be able to listen to them and follow directions and go home or go your separate ways. You don't resist. You don't fight with the police. Well, someone did not teach these people common decency and civility, and they decided they were going to take out their aggression on the police. They were going to, and the assumption is they can do whatever they want with the police and the police won't do a thing. That's New York City. And as we'll see later, the mayor of the city, Mamdani, the newly elected Muslim socialist, is going to basically downplay the whole thing and say, it was just snowball fight that got out of hand, and no big deal, blah, blah, blah. In fact, he is going to simply take the side of the snowball fighters against the police and not even defend law enforcement in the city he's supposed to be responsible over. So that's the setup for this clip. And as you'll see, this is sickening. So the mob is basically throwing things at police, and police are making a way back to their vehicles. So the police here are being humiliated. They're being embarrassed. They're being shamed. They have to walk back in defeat to their vehicle, even though they have guns, and they could start shooting, and these losers would be then what? Wounded and lying in the street, and then they would sue the city, and they would put these policemen who shot back in jail for life. And we know the whole scenario. We've seen it with the George Floyd death, where he died of overdose of fentanyl and was blamed on the policemen. So the police always get blamed in our socialist, liberal, leftist society today. And it's the way lack of authority, lack of respect for authority, and a lack of will for politicians to support authority, because these policemen are simply doing their job. They're simply trying to deal with a situation that got out of hand. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a snowball fight in Central Park, but if it gets too big, if it gets out of hand, if too many people start joining in and they start throwing things at each other, then you have a situation that is not safe for people walking by. It's not safe for the people participating. And so it needed to be dealt with. The police came in to deal with it. And you would think in a civil society that all that would be needed would be the presence of the police coming in and saying, hey, guys, we know that you're having fun, but we need to break this up because it's getting out of hand. It's getting too big. It's getting dangerous. So let's just go our separate ways and call it a day. You had your fun. Let's go. No, they didn't end it right there. They had to now follow the police back to the police vehicle and start throwing at the police disrespectfully. This is a violation of Romans 13. Again, let me read it. It says, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except for which God has established. So God establishes law and order. He doesn't want there to be anarchy in society, doesn't want there to be chaos in society. He wants there to be peace and civility in society. He wants people to be able to go about, go to work, go to school, go buy groceries for their household and do their business, go about their business in a law and abiding way. And you can't have that if authority has broken down. And that's what appeared in this video clip, that civil authority broke down in this instance, where you had civilians actually being aggressive and throwing aggression at police. See, you cannot have this kind of activity taking place in a civilized society. You cannot have a disregard for authority, and because this will spread. And we've seen it. First of all, we saw it most recently in Minnesota, where you had these citizens, these middle-aged women, blocking law enforcement purposefully with their cars in the middle of the street, because for some reason in their mind, they don't want the law enforcement to arrest illegal, violent, undocumented aliens. They don't want them to deport people back to their country, even violent offenders. So these middle-aged women are in these SUVs blocking the immigration officers from doing their job. Now, there wouldn't be any big deal. Immigration officers do this all the time. They've done it for the last 50 years in our country. As more and more people have come into our country, they've had to come and do their job, and it's no big deal. It's part of law enforcement. Happens every day. Except now you have a movement of people who do not respect authority, and they think that they can fight with immigration officers. They can wrestle them to the ground. And so a woman tries to block an ICE agent with her vehicle, and she's not obeying lawfully given orders, and they tell her to move. She's not. She's staying put. And then finally, when she does move, she hits the gas and almost runs over an officer. He takes his gun out and shoots her because he feels she was aiming at him or trying to kill him, which you can do with a vehicle that size. Again, lack of respect for authority. You shouldn't be driving your vehicle at an officer. You shouldn't be blocking the roadway of a lawful operation, immigration operation. And then very soon after that, another guy tries to resist and impede ICE officers, and he gets shot. And it's all because these people are not giving proper authority to the police and immigration officers, and they're trying to interfere with them, and they're trying to disrespect their authority. And it says very clearly in the Bible, we are not to do that. And now you have this in New York. I mean, it's becoming a pattern among our citizens here in the United States, and it has to stop. Where is this going to end when you have this kind of disrespect for authority? The police shouldn't have to be running with their tails between their legs to their police officers to get away from a mob. The mob should be running away from the police in fear that they might be arrested and prosecuted.
Being forced to retreat into their police vehicles right now. They're way outnumbered.
That's illegal. You cannot throw things at a policeman. You cannot throw things at a police officer's car. Again, this blatant disrespect.
For the listening audience, there are, over 100 people following them, all fully grown adults, male and female attackers, if you will, as well. And we have gone now basically 36 hours or more without the mayor of New York saying anything.
Okay, so this is a little bit dated because the mayor has spoken, and the mayor did comment on this, and it was a very pitiful thing. And what the mayor basically said was that he basically said the snowball fight got out of hand, and we can all understand people snowball fighting getting out of hand. And so he said, no problem. It's no big deal. We don't want to make this into a big incident. And totally downplayed the whole problem. And what was the problem? The problem was a blatant lack of respect for the authority of the police. Missed the point completely. He should have used it as a teachable moment and said, look, we are going to prosecute to the full extent of the law every individual that we can identify there that treated the police with contempt. You know, we have such a thing called contempt of court. If you stand before a court in the courtroom and you stand before the judge, you cannot speak disrespectfully to that judge. You cannot act disrespectfully to that judge. You cannot treat the whole process. You cannot treat the court process, the legal system, the officers that bring you in. You cannot treat the jury disrespectfully. You have to maintain a decorum in that courtroom, or else you will be charged with contempt of court, disrespect of the legal process. We have a process in this country. It's not perfect. In fact, it's flawed in many, many ways. But there has to be a general understanding that you treat the process respectfully, you treat the court system and officers respectfully, and you treat, of course, the judge respectfully. And if you don't, you'll be slapped with another charge called contempt of court, and you can spend time in jail for that and incur fines and all kinds of penalties. So what's the difference between contempt of court and contempt of law enforcement? There's no difference. You have to respect both. And not just in that realm, you have to respect the governing authorities. Let me read again what the Apostle Paul says in the book of Romans. Let me just read that because it's so simple. It says, everyone must submit himself to governing authorities, for there is no authority except from which God established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. So they're going to get jail time. They will get fines. They should get fined. These thugs, these hoodlums, these rebels who are pelting the police with ice and snow, they should get jail time. They should get fined. They should get a criminal record. And to teach them and other people that you cannot treat authorities like this. You cannot just do whatever you want to do because you feel like doing it. Now, the problem was the mayor in his response, and Megyn Kelly didn't show his later response because at that time, the time of the taping of her video, he hadn't really responded. But what he does, he gets on the television and says, it was just a snowball fight in Central Park that got out of hand. No, it wasn't. It was not a snowball fight that got out of hand. That is just part of it. There was a snowball fight, and it did get out of hand, and it did get too big, and it did impose a danger to the community, and so the police came in. But they were not playing along with the snowball fight, so there wasn't a snowball fight between the police and the citizens. They were there to control the situation, and the people in the snowball fight started throwing things at them. That is illegal. You cannot throw objects at police. This was the problem in Minnesota, for example. They were throwing frozen water bottles at police. They were throwing bricks at police. throwing objects at police. The one guy that actually got shot, he kicked in the taillight of a government vehicle. There were people stealing in Minnesota, stealing weapons and other equipment from a police vehicle. You can't break into a police vehicle. It's illegal to break into a vehicle anyway, whether it's police or not. But then when the law enforcement's there, you can't steal guns and weapons from a police officer's vehicle, forcing open the trunk and grabbing his ammunition and things. You can't do that. That's a felony. And you can't throw ice and hard objects at a police in New York City. That's a crime. And yet the mayor basically brushes it off as, it's just a snowball fight that got out of hand. Totally disrespecting police officers had to put up with that humiliation and disgrace because they knew that if they started to do what they should have done, which is basically arrest these thugs and anyone else who was throwing and disrespecting the law, that the police officers would probably get reprimanded, might even be fired, because of the twisted and perverse justice system now in some of these big cities. So the whole scenario was totally upside down. And then it says, for rulers hold no fear for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the authorities? Then do what is right, and he will commend you. For he is God's servant to do your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. So if you're doing wrong, and if you're part of this mob that was throwing snowballs and ice balls at the police, you need to fear that the police are going to arrest you and put you in prison. And you're going to have to spend time in prison. You should fear that. And you should fear fines, heavy, steep fines. Well, you say, I'm just throwing a snowball at the police. Yeah, but you're not supposed to be throwing a snowball at the police. You're not supposed to be throwing anything at the police because that shows contempt and respect. Just like you can't walk into a courtroom and throw a snowball at the judge. You think you could get away with that if you threw an ice ball at the presiding judge in a courtroom? No. Well, what's the difference? They're both legally official authorities of the state. And you are commanded by God to respect their position. You don't have to agree with what they're telling you. You don't have to support them. You might have even voted against the judge that is presiding over your criminal case, but you have to respect the office. You have to respect the office of policeman. You have to respect the office of law enforcement. You have to respect the office of the Immigration and Custom Enforcement Officer, ICE. You have to respect the office. They are appointed by the state for the good of society, for the law and order of society, and you have to abide by that. And if you don't, you should fear jail time or fines or arrest or something. You should fear the consequences of disrespecting the authorities. And so there's really no place in society for this kind of behavior. It's totally intolerable. And the mayor of New York, shame on him for putting up with this and brushing it aside and just saying, it's just harmless fun. We didn't want anything to happen to those citizens. They're just letting off a little steam. It's kind of like the George Floyd riots. Some of these liberal leftist mayors of the cities, these thugs, hoodlums, rebels, anarchists, burning down buildings and burning cars and burning up parts of the city And the response was, well, they're just letting off a little steam. We have to give them space. We have to give them room. It's the same way when a policeman pulls you over for speeding. You do what the policeman says to do. You do not sit there and argue with him. You do not resist his authoritative instructions. If he says to roll down the window, you roll down the window. If he says put your hands on the steering wheel, you put your hands on the steering wheel. If he says he needs your registration and insurance and license, you give it to him. If he says he's going to give you a ticket, you can politely, courteously try to dialogue with him. But in the end, if he has decided that he's going to give you that ticket, it's over. You need to just take the punishment and then be on your way. Do not resist what he's saying, or else you'll turn like some of these videos that we see on YouTube. You will then, if you're stubborn enough and stupid enough, you will turn a simple traffic infraction into a felony. Because then if you start getting belligerent and you start insulting the policeman and you stop cooperating with him, he will tell you to step out of the car. And then if you resist that, he will break your window and pull you out of the car, and he'll put you in handcuffs. He'll put you in the back of the squad car, and he'll take you down to the police office, and he will book you, and you will be in big trouble then. So you'll take a little traffic ticket and turn it into perhaps a couple felonies, resisting arrest and all kinds of other charges. And all it starts with is just simply obeying God's will, and that is yield to a lawful authoritative command. And these people in the park, okay, the snowball fight is over. Okay, the police show up. That's a good time to end, when the police show up. So you listen to what they say. If you're in a snowball fight and the police come up to you, you stop the snowball fight. You stop throwing snowballs. You put your snowballs down and you listen to what the police are saying. Why? Because they're a lawful authority to keep order, law and order in society. And you're part of the society, so you have to listen to them. Especially if you're a Christian. There's no excuse for this. But even if you're not, you should know that you need to put the snowballs down and listen to the officer. And if the officer says, okay, let's break this up now, you had your fun, then you quietly disperse back to your homes and to whatever else you were doing before this all took place, and you quietly leave. That's what respect for authority is. You do not follow behind the policeman like this crowd did and start throwing snowball and ice at the policeman. That is totally outrageous, and that cannot stand. Our society will not stand if that happens. So we need to really pray that we come back to law and order and that Romans 13 is fulfilled in our citizens. See you back next week. God bless.